Christian parenting.
Now, the 3 B's to help regulate your child are breathing, bilateral movement, and beating hearts. I'm going to go into all the specifics, but before I begin, I want to emphasize the importance of communicating to your child that you are there with them. Hey families, and welcome back to the Call to Love podcast, where, as you know, each week we dive into the practical, the clinical, and always most importantly, the biblical aspects of the foster care and adoption callings. I am so grateful that you have chosen to spend the next few moments with me. Now, we are in week 3 of sort of an end of the summer series all about how to promote emotional and behavioral regulation in your family. For the last couple of weeks, we've talked about what dysregulated behaviors look like and the questions to ask when your child's behavior escalates through the HALT method. If you've missed those first 2 episodes, I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to those, as each week we're just building on the information that I've shared in this series. While you're at it, be sure to grab your free download from this series at the link in today's show notes, and stay tuned as I am working to provide more resources through my weekly newsletter. So I would love for you to go ahead and join the community and subscribe, and I am working to get more resources out for you. Today, I am going to dive into more specific tools. So we've given more of an overview over the last couple of weeks, and now I want to give you where rubber meets the road when you're in the middle of an escalation issue with behavior, when your child becomes dysregulated. What do you do? So here's one really important point that I want to make as we are talking about all of our tools today. When a child becomes dysregulated, they require the confident and steady presence of a caregiver who knows how to help them restore to calm and felt safety. So whatever the reason behind the trigger, when a child is triggered, their brain reverts to a survival, fight, flight, or freeze mode, and that sympathetic nervous system kicks into a high gear, preparing them to respond to a perceived threat. And they need us as their caregivers to help them come off of that and to be confident in how we do that. Because higher functions of thinking and feeling are essentially overridden by that sympathetic nervous system. They cannot receive correction, new information, or really respond logically until someone that they know and trust helps them to de-escalate and bring them out of that panic, fight, flight, or freeze, fear-based mode. Guys, there are so many tools, but I want to give you practical methods that are easy to recall, and especially in moments of escalation when you yourself are escalated, it can be harder for you to recall some of these things. So I'm breaking them down into very basic categories over these next 3 episodes. So today, specifically, I'm going to dive into the 3 B's for a dysregulated child. Now, the 3 B's to help regulate your child are breathing, bilateral movement, and beating hearts. I'm going to go into all the specifics, but before I begin, I want to emphasize the importance of communicating to your child that you are there with them. By practicing alongside them, you are proving to your children that you are a caregiver who can be trusted, and you have a plan to help them when they panic and dysregulation. Let's begin with number 1 out of our 3 B's. That is breathing. So essentially, this is moving oxygen through the body. Sounds like basic information, but the truth is, this is the best tool to calm a dysregulated brain. That is just breathing, movement of air throughout the body. This stimulates the brain and the essential body functions to basically reset and return to normal function out of that sympathetic nervous system functioning. Now, deep breathing brings oxygen to the brain, helping it to reset from that fight, flight, or freeze mode, and it reactivates the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps the child to calm down. Breathing also decreases cortisol, the stress hormone, which is rapidly running through their bodies as they're preparing to respond to that perceived threat that they're experiencing. Breathing also stimulates the vagus nerve, and this is the nerve that stretches all the way from your brain down to your intestine, and this controls the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps your body switch between fight, flight, or freeze, rather to the rest and digest mode. Have you ever heard of the brain-gut connection? This is why our kids who are often triggered or who struggle with trauma and fear-based behavior often complain of stomach upset. There is a very clear scientific tie to the brain and the gut. It's really fascinating. I won't go into that today, but do your research. It really is amazing. Now, when breathing, this is very crucial. It sounds basic, but when you are leading your children through their breathing exercises as you are working to de-escalate their and bring them back to a place of calm, you want to encourage them to breathe through their nose and exhale through their mouths. This is the most optimal way to move that oxygen through the body. So for my daughter specifically, we always use the example of smell the rose and blow out the birthday candle. You can get really creative and whatever your child best responds to. It could be smell the cookies baking in the oven and blow gently out on the hot chocolate. You don't want them just to suck in really fast and blow out really aggressively. That's actually going to create more of an issue, and it's going to cause hyperventilation, and it's just going to escalate the problem further. So you want to teach and model gentle, slower inhales and slow exhales. There's a method called the 4-7-8 method. So that means you inhale very slowly for 4 seconds. You actually hold your breath for 7, and then you slowly blow out for 8. So while your child is doing that, you can say, okay, I'm going to count for you. You might do it in a really calm whisper. You might do it in a funny voice that helps them just to know that you are there, you are stable, and you're creating somewhat of a pleasant experience for them as they are carrying out that breathing method for you. Reward them with good tone of voice and very gentle eyes and a very calm body posture as you are doing this. If they see you're tense and you're panicked, they are not going to want to cooperate with you in these breathing exercises. Another thing I would encourage you to do is just to Google breathing exercises for kids and discover the array of methods that might best work for your child. So number 1 of the 3 B's is breathing. Number 2, bilateral movement. Basically, that means you are making both sides of your body move back and forth. So think of something very simple like walking. Right leg, left leg, right leg, left leg. That is bilateral movement. One side walking in rhythm and in cooperation with the other. This forces the right brain to talk to the left brain and therein regulate itself. Walking also increases your heart rate and forces deeper breathing, which goes back to our first point. As we just discussed, breathing greatly benefits a dysregulated brain. Practice what your child responds to best when they are regulated. So maybe this looks like you're kind of testing the waters with what they respond to, what they feel like is fun. March like a soldier for little boys. And so you just really have them exaggerate those, their fists and moving their arms back and forth and maybe lifting their knees. If they really enjoy that, then your go-to when you're ready to have them work that bilateral movement, tell them, okay, we're going to march like a soldier. Maybe for little girls, it's tiptoe like a princess, and you do it very dainty and very rhythmic, and that's something fun for them. For older kids, it can just be, okay, I can see that you're escalating. Let's go take a walk together. And this provides side-by-side company so they see that you're there and you are helping to regulate with them without this perceived threat of being face-to-face where you might be perceived as coming at them, or it might be a conflict or a further perceived threat for them. But if you're walking alongside them and you don't even have to say anything, we talked about this in a previous episode, sometimes your presence is all that they need. But if you're there and you're walking with them, you are partnering with them in that bilateral movement and you're helping their body to regulate and come down off of that escalation through that bilateral movement. This also is important to practice ahead of time when everyone is regulated to create muscle memory so that the body remembers it when the brain is dysregulated and unable to think or comply clearly. It can just snap back into that mode because it's something that you have built into muscle memory over time. And it's also associated with pleasant and calm times where the child felt safe and comforted in your presence. So it's easier for them to revert back to with that muscle memory. As Christian parents, we all want to be praying for our kids, but knowing what to pray can be really hard sometimes. That's why Christian Parenting created its newest resource, a great Cloud of Witnesses prayer journal. This is to help busy parents like you and me to intentionally pray over our children and their faith all year long. This weekly journal walks through the lives of faithful men and women in Scripture like Abraham, Sarah, Moses, and Rahab, who all trusted an extraordinary God. It helps you to pray boldly for your kids to follow in their footsteps, grow in godly character, deepen their faith, and trust in God's plan for their lives. And bonus, every Monday on the Pardon the Mess podcast, host Courtney DeFeo will be praying through the journal with you. You can visit cpgive.org and use code CLOUD to get your special podcast listener discount. That's cpgive.org, code CLOUD. Now let's get back to the conversation. Another great example of bilateral movement is a practice called tapping. Now, I didn't know much about this, but it actually goes back to that regulation of the vagus nerve, and you literally are just alternating. Give yourself a hug and you tap your shoulders back and forth. Tap, 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 tap. And you have your child do that. There's other ways. If you also just Google tapping exercises, you can look on YouTube. There's a lot of different examples of ways that you can do that. But I would encourage you, as you're getting started, just start with a very simple give yourself a hug and let's tap our shoulders back and forth. Another really helpful suggestion with this is playing like a mirroring game. So you can sit across from a child and say, okay, do what I do. And you can model that. First, I'm going to give myself a nice big hug. Then I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to tap this side, this side, this side, this side. Again, keeping your voice very calm, very soothing. Your eyes are soft. You are pleasant in the way that your body language is communicating to them. And you're saying, do this with me. I'm here to help you. And this can be something that can be a real difference maker when you are trying to de-escalate your child. Use rhythm. That is something that our brains naturally respond to, and we come into compliance with a whole lot easier. I really would love to understand more of the brain science behind that. But if you have a really pleasant song that your child relates to, whether it's a lullaby, whether it's just a fun song that y'all love to do together, if it's calm and it's soothing, start to tap to that rhythm of that song and very gently sing it, and do it very softly and instruct very softly so that your children are forced to pay attention and even change up the pattern of what you're doing, because the more you redirect their attention as they are really studying your movements to try and mimic them, guess what? It's taking their minds off of what escalated them in the first place, and you are better to able achieve that de-escalation process. You might use something like, okay, we are going to be gentle drummers right now, or we're giving fairy pats, little dainty pats. And then you can get really creative with your child's interests based on their age and their developmental stage. Always, even for older kids, offer to sit with them and allow them to see you practicing the method. Don't just tell them, okay, you're escalated, go do your tapping. That's going to be completely counterproductive and probably escalate them further. So let them see you practicing the method right alongside them, and you will see great success in that. One other example of bilateral movement that I think is really helpful is to stretch and maybe do the mirroring game where they see you and you're wiggling your ankles and your feet back and forth, and you're seeing you can spin one way this way with your toes, and then you can wiggle and make a circle with another, and you can alternate and give them things to watch and mirror in you, and then always encourage them to breathe as they are moving in whatever these exercises are. Something else that I thought was really interesting when I was studying all of this, going back to the music part of it, the vocal cords are actually directly connected to your vagus nerve. And so singing in of itself is another regulation tool that you can include in your movement, whether that's walking, whether that's the tapping, or whether that's wiggling those toes and those ankles. Simple, calm songs that are not overstimulating. I would love to hear you try out these methods and then report back how they have been successful, or maybe something new that you've discovered that you would like to share with our listeners. Okay, number 3, beating heart. Nighttime is a very common trigger for kids with trauma. And my daughter and I specifically have learned through trial and error that rather than fits or crying or stalling at bedtime, to simply just, when we feel the discomfort or when she feels the discomfort coming on and the fear of bedtime and that separation, because loneliness is a big part of her. When you go back to that HALT method, loneliness at nighttime is a big trigger for her. So instead of all of the unpleasant behaviors that can come with that ask behind that loneliness, we have learned to teach her to ask for that comfort and connection by saying, can we please have heartbeat time? Some nights she doesn't need it. Some nights she is great to settle in under her blankets with her book and settle right into bed. But for whatever reason, if she reverts back and she needs that, all she has to do is say, Mommy, can we have heartbeat time? And that's an easy yes, because I know what she's asking for. So let me explain how it works very practically for us. She has a loft bed and she has everything just so, lots of loveys, lots of blankets, lots of things like that. And so I go and I climb up the little stairs and I sit at the edge of the bed and I wait for her to get her nest just right. And we talk about where all the stuffed animals are supposed to sleep. And then she chooses like her favorite lovey and a blanket. And she comes and she lays across my chest at the end of the bed. And she positions her head on my chest strategically so that she can hear my heartbeat. And now you can do this anywhere. You can do this on the porch swing. You can do this in a rocking chair, in one of your favorite comfy parts of the house, wherever your child best finds comfort. If this is something that happens during the day and you really need to employ this and a bed's not appropriate, find other places that feel comfortable and a safe space for your child. I would also include soft clothing that's not scratchy or not irritating, that might activate any type of sensory sensitivities that they might have. So, and peaceful music is another one. If you've got an Alexa in the room or something like that, where you can just play soft instrumental music or soft worship music while you're doing this, these are all components that will help make that heartbeat time really, really special. Research shows that several seconds into a hug, I've read anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds, the hormone oxytocin is released, and this regulates blood pressure and heart rate. It fights stress chemicals in the body, and it gives the feelings of love, trust, and felt safety. So heartbeat time is essentially an extended hug. So imagine the impact that that has on our kiddos, especially when they have those stress hormones running rampant through their bodies. Simple practices like heartbeat time and a hug during heartbeat time can help to counter those stress hormones and instead provide that oxytocin to offset and to override that agitated system. It also stills their wiggles and helps to prevent agitation and escalation. Bodies that are stressed often wiggle and keep themselves stimulated on purpose so that they don't have to feel or experience the discomfort of their fears. This is especially challenging in situations like bedtime or instruction time in a classroom or social situations like a restaurant that require more stillness. A lot of times for our trauma kids, when the body is still, the trauma brain has time to lie to them very loudly and cause distress. And so heartbeat time allows for a safe and comforting way for you to guide your child into a calm and still state so that they can physically rest and mentally rest. Have your child maybe participate as you're first introducing heartbeat time, or maybe this is something that just helps them to calm. Have them tap every time they hear your heartbeat. So maybe their hand is on their little hand is on your shoulder, and every time they hear your heartbeat, they just tap, and they're in sync with that. This causes them to attune and really listen, take their mind off of what is scaring them, and they're able to participate in that way. Teach them how to feel their own pulse, and then you compare to yours. Say, okay, here's how you feel yours, let's count. Here's how you feel mommy's, let's count. All of these tools effectively divert their focus onto the calming activity and away from what was triggering their fears. Now, after they have calmed down from any of these, you may choose to let them fall asleep and then address any behavioral correction, maybe the following morning after a full belly with their breakfast. Or if it's still daytime, you can allow for some quiet time after you have achieved this regulation stage and provide a snack, and then address the behavior and talk together about how to do better next time. As we're talking about all of these tools, and in closing out today, I want to remind you that regulation tools do not replace correction and discipline. They actually ensure a calm brain and a receptive heart that is better ready to receive the direction and correction from a caregiver that has proven that they love and support them. So, true improvement in communication and behavior can take place, and that will just help your family to work better as a unit as you're anticipating and knowing what to do, and you have a plan in place and tools ready to employ when you experience these moments of escalation. So that, my friends, is the 3 beats to help you regulate your child. Next week, I'm going to go even more basic, and we're going to talk about the 3 C's to help regulate your child so that you can just add this to your mental library and your toolbox as a foster and adoptive parent. Friends, I hope these tools have been encouraging. Again, I would love for you to try them out and to follow up with me. Send me a message. Tell me some stories about how they did or did not work, and follow up with any questions that you might have if you would like for me to dive deeper into any of the aspects that I have shared today. I love hearing from you, and I am so honored to be able to continue to serve you. Until next week, we will be talking about the 3 C's to help regulate your child. I look forward to being with you then and would love to hear from you in the meantime. Blessings, sweet friends. Thank you so much for listening to Called to Love today. I love to hear from listeners, and so I would love to connect with you to hear your stories and answer your questions right here on the show. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, send me a direct message, or send me an email at the link in today's show notes. I pray you have been encouraged by today's episode to walk in faith and continue to embrace your own call to love. Until next time, blessings, sweet friends.